Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Let's as always start with a little bit of news, and CCP did give us some information on the first quadrant called Rain. We got a trailer as well, and while on TQ what has been deployed so far is the new feature for finding fleets. So you can just go to the agency now and then click on Fleet Up and then find public fleets that are up and running, some player friendly, doing different things. I do think it's pretty cool. I have yet to delve into it myself to join one of these fleets or do something, but so far, yeah, it does look like it's very accessible, and it should, I think, allow players to find groups when they want to a little bit more easily, a little bit more straightforward, I would say, than the fleet finder itself. Next up from the trailer, we also know that CCP is working on fleet formations in Warp, which I think is really cool. Quite a few players, I think, are on the other side of the spectrum on that and saying, why are you spending time with something like that? But it's always been, you know, whenever I joined a mass test, like one of the last things that really pulled me out of the immersion is that when you would have a warp with just a couple of supers or something like that, a couple of carriers even, it would just create this ball of ships that would be like, you know, within each other. The models would all clip, and that really kept me out of the immersion. So I've always been someone to voice that opinion that it would be very cool if you could set formations in Warp and then the way you land as well. We'll see how it works, of course. I'm gonna assume that you don't want to use that whenever you actually warp to a gate, but we'll see. It is promising, and I think it looks really cool, so can't wait for that to be on CC, can't wait for us to do a mass test with those types of formations. I think it will be cool, and then yeah, let's hope that it's not the only thing. Of course, we do have the Guardians Gala that's happening again. Also, you know, pretty busy for me actually at the moment, but haven't jumped into those, but definitely something that I will try to do as quickly as possible. Next up, as always, we'll also take a quick look at the new Eden store, and since we have Valentine's Day approaching, CCP is bringing back the Heart Search skin, and there's even a sale here happening somewhere down here. So 30 days Omega time plus a free Jackdaw skin going for 500 plex. So basically you get a free skin if you use a 500 plex in order to grab that 30-day Omega time, and you get that free skin. And if we go for the services, it's showing up there as well. It's basically the regular Omega time plus a free Jackdaw skin, which I think is going to be the Heart Search skin. But that's all there is to report there, so that means that we get to move on to the market itself. As always, we'll start with Plex and stuff, and that's coming in on 3 minutes. Like that, and let's start with those Plex then. Well, not really a big impact from this sale so far on Plex themselves, perhaps a slight stop of the decline, but we're basically flat at a pretty low point for the year, almost a 1-year low point. I do think this will have been like a little bit lower on the volatility of the decline here, but for now Plex are selling for just above 2.5 million in Jita, and just above 2.5 million in the Tranquility Trading Tower as well. Buyers are coming in at just above 2.4 million. I think they're down a little bit from last week. Yep, and actually the highest buyer is also in Jita 4.4, so quite a bit of competition here actually for Plex at these bottom prices. I do think that there are a lot of players that are indeed deciding where to position themselves for the expected future of Plex and basically the economy in general in the game. Are we expecting inflation to be able to take hold again? Then of course you want to buy at the moment, or do you think that CCP may actually still nerf some more income sources like the incursions? Then you may be on the side of selling at the moment, and it's really still up in the air as CCP has not come out with a lot more information on how they want to handle the resource situation in the game. All we know is that at the moment they're pretty happy with basically how they've been able to bring back the potential to, well, what's too low for a stable economy in their opinion. So eventually there should be increased potential for rewards and earnings in the game, but they want to go through that until they feel like the economy is in a good spot in general, and it's probably still a little bit too bloated in their opinion, but we'll see. Hopefully CCP comes out with some more information on that, and hopefully we will get some cool stuff as well around April, May, as always, with the anniversary and where we would normally get a fan fest, that all of that is not happening again, of course, because of the real life situation. But let's see what CCP comes out with. I don't think that this is it, that the trailer and the formations, that is all they have planned for the game. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificates following suit, starting its hesitation pattern at a low point here as well. No longer just going down at a steady pace, but sometimes up, sometimes down a little bit. And we're talking, let's take a look at that, 1.25 billion for the sellers and just below 1.2 billion for the buyers, which honestly, to me, feels like a doable range for 30 days trading time on a character. I've managed to do that in like 2 weeks with exploration and a little bit of selling from some stocks. So of course, I did dip into some of the old stuff that I've found as well. But yeah, with these Angel Cartel sites at the moment in Minmatar space, I feel like the drops are generous enough that it is absolutely possible, for me at least, to build up $1 billion in revenue, in profit, I should say, over the course of a month. So yeah, it does feel like, if you found your niche, if you found what you enjoy, what you can do on a daily basis, and you can make a nice return on that, you will actually be able to plex your accounts a lot more easily than, let's say, a year ago, where you had to go up to 1.6, 1.7 billion ISK for that 30-day game time. After that, we've got the skill extractors that are showing a continued decline. That's not good news for Plex if you're looking for that stop in that decline, which seems to be forming here. This may actually then be a little bit of the sale and a little bit of CCP stuff that's starting to come through, because skill extractors are still very clearly going down on both the 5-day moving average and the 20-day moving average. Still a little bit of margin between these two, so that pressure is still in the market. 283.5 million for the sellers, 278 for the buyers. It's starting to narrow again on the margin, but it's definitely a steady decline that we're seeing for the skill extractors. So that should not make good news for the injectors, and well, it's actually okay, although also at a pretty low point. They're starting to flatten out on the 20-day moving average, and again starting to see some hesitation in the market. You can clearly see that just about a month ago we reached a 1-year low point right around here. Let's see if I can get a data point, 620 million, and then we actually made our way back to 650. Bit of pressure again, and now we're basically flat in between those 2 points for the last week or so. 637 million for the sellers, 610 for the buyers. My guess is that those two don't have to budge that much more anymore. The buyers are not really able to push the price to, let's say, less than 600 million. There's enough competition to try and grab it up to 610. And then those sellers, well, there's not that much extra supply out there anymore that it's going to keep crashing the price down either. They're trying to get to 640, but just not succeeding. So yeah, we're starting to on this one to see some bottom forming, in my opinion. Skill extractors though are part of the skill injector equation, and those are still under pressure. These small skill injectors confirming the pattern. Today's average actually getting back to that 130 million average, almost there for the sellers. So this is slowly being absorbed by the market. We will probably get sellers very close to 130 million very soon, and then still 120 for the buyers. This is a little bit of surprise if we take a look at the large scale injectors that are basically 5 times larger in the price scale. We go from 637 to 610, so that's a difference of 27 million ISK. And then those small scale injectors, right? If you would do 27, let's just call it 25 divided by 5, around 5 million. These small scale injectors still have a margin of 10 million ISK between sellers and buyers, so that's twice as large as those large scale injectors. And the pattern though is the exact same thing, a little bit of hesitation between selling and buying, between inflation and deflation as the next step for the economy. Our daily alpha injectors were declining substantially last week and are now basically trying to maintain a deep current price range, probably 42-ish million or something like that. Yeah, 42.6 for the sellers and 39 million for the buyers. Only one of them, 38.5 next, 37.8, just a little bit down there. So still seeing some pressure from less demand, I would say, all of a sudden for daily alpha injectors. We're settling slightly above average for the year, but getting very close to that 40 million average price. And then finally, we've got our hypercores that are settling down at a 1-year low point here as well. Currently selling for 260,000 ISK, buyers coming in at 250, which may correlate, right? You've got daily alpha injectors down on probably lower activity from alpha clones. That's a possibility. And then you've got the hypercores also showing lower activity in the game at the moment. And well, I gotta say, looking at the threads on the announcement for the rain quadrant, a little bit of mixed reception. Definitely not a major hype builder, but if you've been playing EVE Online for some time, you do know that there are periods where CCP goes all in on storytelling, on cool stuff happening in the game, which you know, they're working on behind the scenes, like the whole Triglavian invasion stuff that we've had basically up to last year. And that sometimes there are, you know, drier periods for that type of content where it's more about you'll have to find your own way in the sandbox, make your own fun, set your own goals, tell your own stories. And I think that we're basically in that, you know, in that period now after the whole Triglavian mega story. CCP needs a little bit of time to develop the next leg of storytelling in the game. And so I think we're up for a little bit more maintenance, some more mechanical stuff coming to the game, such as the potentially announced smaller structures and things like that. Could still be very cool, but you will be a lot more dependent on finding and creating content yourself. Although we also know that the Guardians Gala is coming back, so they have some of the regular events that are happening as well. Overall, yeah, I think that CCP is finding a good balance, but if you're expecting something that you can, you know, really follow a story on for the next week or something like that, which you really could with Triglavians, you could just watch streams and basically see what was happening. That is not on the cards for the very near future. We don't know what's coming after all of this, of course. Next up, the mineral market coming in at 1210. And let's take a look at those, starting as always with Tritanium. That is under pressure and is now, since over a year ago, CCP announced the resource crunch in the game, which drove the price up to 10 ISK, back down to 7, back up to 10, and then now finally we are settling down to 6 ISK on the chart for the sellers in Jita. Let's put that filter back up, 604, so just above 6 for the sellers, 589 for the buyers. Definitely a small margin here between sellers and buyers, but we're back on that 6 ISK range, which is, well, for me, hesitation. You could very much decide to hoard your Tritanium, waiting for better prices down the line, which can happen if you look at this chart. On the other hand, if you want to sell your Tritanium, it's still an okay price to do so. Once you go below 6 ISK, that's where it becomes a little bit of an iffy situation for me personally. I do feel that then other minerals may be better for ISK, and that Tritanium you'll want to hoard that. But looking at these volumes, 100 million here, 150 here, another 150, no, 79 or 250. Basically, I do think that the bigger entities, the bigger corporations, alliances, have found their new patterns, their new supply lines when it comes to Tritanium basically becoming something that's only available in HiSec. They're dominating their areas, they've got their mining corporations up and running, and that is creating all of this extra supply that has driven the price back down to 6 ISK. So basically for Tritanium, I would say that the situation has been absorbed and we're back on a normal price. 6 ISK it looks bad on the chart, but historically speaking, it's actually an okay price for Tritanium, and that we are now again dependent on production and consumption in the game for the price setting of Tritanium. So on like a lot of destruction, another big fight happening in Nullsec, you could see a surge in the price as demand all of a sudden for ship replacements would increase, and at the same time supplies have been established and they're obviously plentiful for the market, so that is going to keep that those price increases in check and create potentially opportunities, of course, for better sales down the line. At the moment, not sure what to do, I would probably focus on other minerals if I have the opportunity. Such as here, pyrite, pretty damn good week, still a flat, able to defend its current range of probably 18 ISK or something like that. Let's take a look at that. 1850 for the sellers, 1810 for the buyers, again, really narrow margin. And then one thing that may be a little bit worrying, I gotta say this, although it is maintaining a normal pattern, we're still seeing 40 million, 65 million, 69 million, 60 million, another 60 down here. We're seeing big and regular established volumes come back to the market as well. This may be another side product of First Titanium finding its supply lines back. Pyrite is quite often a side product for that, and so that does seem to be picking up here as well. But let's hope that this price range of just below 20 ISK is defendable. This is definitely a pretty good mineral to still be going after, especially looking at this 1-year chart. And then next for HiSec we have Mexalon, a little bit of a pullback, but this is still a great price historically speaking. 134 ISK for the sellers, 125 for the buyers. The historical price is actually down here somewhere, 75-ish. Was actually always a good price for Mexalon. So this is the one mineral that is still really commanding a premium at the moment when it comes to HiSec. So that should be your focus if you're mining in HiSec. Try to find sources for Mexalon and focus on that first. It is going to increase your ISK per hour quite a lot, and the main reason is probably that it has regained its status as being a real bottleneck in the production cycles in nullsec, where a lot of production really does happen because they have, of course, the best bonuses from being out there in risky space. And as a result, here Mexalon really still at a very, very high price and your focus for HiSec mining. Moving on to the stuff that's more low-sec based, like Isogen, we have, a move back above 40 ISK, which is definitely not so bad. Oh, I should really take a quick look at these volumes as well. For Mexalon, you can clearly see the volumes are way down as well, sub 10 million for these sell orders. So that's a big dive down in volumes per sell order from Pyrite down to Mexalon. And then for Isogen, we are back up to 45 ISK almost for the sellers, 42.8 ISK for the buyers. And now here, this final bit, I do think, is starting to be a little bit more regular supply stuff, 10 million and below as well for Isogen, but it's the old stocks that are still keeping the price in check, and especially here a 1.9 billion units of Isogen in a single sell order. It's now 50 days old, it's at 45 ISK. It's basically what's keeping this price from breaking out above this level at the moment. Once we manage to chew through these reserves, I do think that Isogen is set to establish itself at a higher price, probably something comparative to Mexalon, perhaps even a higher price, considering that you should go to low sec in order to find good supplies for that. But right now we still have a lot of Isogen to go through, and even up here we still have another 100 million, quite a few older orders in very large quantities that are basically not what you would expect looking at the volumes for Mexalon, and then at the new volumes that are coming in here for Isogen. Yeah, the 2 million range should probably become the average volumes that I would expect long term for Isogen. But of course, 1.9 billion units, almost 2 billion units, you could say, in old reserves, compared to 2 million on a regular day basis. That will still take quite a lot of time for the market to fully absorb that, and for us to go back to that supply and demand equilibrium where that will determine the price. Right now, you could say that it's still supply demand, but it's definitely old supplies, old reserves that are keeping that price in check at the moment. After that, we've got Noxium, also mostly sourced from a low sec, just made a 1-year high point around 10 days ago, getting towards 1500 ISK. So 1370 for the sellers, 1300 for the buyers. And here again, you've got one seller of 5 million units, one of 4, but a lot of these are starting to dip down to less than 1 million units. So 2 million to 1 million, probably the average for Noxium. And you don't see billions of units in a single sell order here, and thus Noxium has been able to make that price change, and right now it is supply demand, active supply demand I'm gonna call it then, that determines the price range for Noxium. And since you gotta get it from low sec, potentially a little bit in null sec as well, this is the result. If one of the really big winners from the resource crunch that CCP started over a year ago with really crazy high prices. So again, if you are able to mine in low sec, or that's what you want to do, obviously you want to hunt for Noxium rather than Isogen at the moment. That price difference is just that big. After that, we're moving on to stuff from nullsec, which is Zydrine, for instance. All right, a little bit of a weird data point down here at 0 ISK that's messing with the chart, but in general, we are also plateauing at a similar price to Noxium. We're talking 1400 ISK for the sellers, 1300 for the buyers, and here again, that volume going down per sell order is still true. 1 to 2 million, the biggest orders, most of them below 1 million units, resulting in a very high price of over 1400 ISK for the sellers. That's of course one of the most expensive minerals that's out there, specifically for Tech 1 production, the most expensive one. And then we've got our other still oddball out here is Megasite, also from nullsec. Generally you're getting less Megasite than Zydrine per cubic meter of whatever it is that you mine, but look at that, still holding at just 635 ISK, so around half the price of Zydrine. 629 for the buyers, really narrow margin, so we're definitely setting that price. But we've got 20 million here, 3 million here, another 10 million down here, another 10 million down here, and we do have, well, another 20 million down here, actually at 650 as well. And the real question is, are these all stocks, or are there still supplies? And I think it's Triglavian stuff that is still providing these supplies, although maybe it's still old stocks as well. And then once these dry up, you can clearly see that most of the other orders are in the 500,000 unit range. So here for Megasite, I'm hesitating. I was not expecting stocks to still have an impact at this point, but maybe they are. And that players are basically selling these stocks a lot more slowly than a 1.9 billion unit order here, and that they're more careful, keeping a little bit of ammo, trying to get the best prices for that old Megasite from the market. Once, you know, if you get rid of all of these orders, let's say above 1 million units, then you are down to the 500,000 ISK range, and that should potentially increase the price as well, which I'm not sure if that is going to happen, or if there are supplies out there that are basically more efficient than what you can do with Zydrine, for instance. But Megasite's still basically half the price of its other nullsec counterpart. And then for the final mineral not tied to the Tech 1 production cycle, here is Morphite, the most expensive one. Now that's a 1 year gain, probably 5x, five times the price or so. Started at 12,500, which was actually high at the time as well. We had a whole period below 10,000 ISK before all of this, and it's now still selling for over 75,000 ISK. Buyers coming in at 72.5 as well. Super expensive, and definitely also something that you want to focus on if you're able to mine in nullsec. And can I see? You can't see where you're sourcing that from, but you can clearly see that it's used for Tech 2 and some implants and things like that as well, which makes it a rather unique mineral, and at the moment probably the most profitable to get in your cargo hold. After that mineral stuff, let's move on to the PI market, coming in at 23.20. Let's take a look at this. You can clearly see, of course, that the last year has been quite a gaining proposition for a lot of these minerals, right? A lot of the prices are up, some double the price, fivefold the price, and that has generally been because CCP's philosophy a little bit over a year ago was resources are too plentiful, we gotta do something about that. So we went to that resource crunch period. We basically want to reward actively playing the game over passively playing the game, and as a result, all of that nerfing hit the PI market very hard, which is probably one of the most passive ways of creating stuff in EVE Online. And so you can see that decline here expressed in October when we went down from 2 million to less than a million ISK for the broadcast nodes. But for advanced PI materials, we have this very nice second leg up for broadcast nodes heading towards 1.5 million, almost that for the sellers and almost 1.4 million for the buyers. And the real question is, what is happening here with that resurgence for PI? In all likeliness, there's not a single explanation. I could come up with at least a couple of those. The number one, we have seen from the plex stuff that perhaps there's a little bit less activity in the game at the moment, which could mean that a lot of players have given up on their PI cycles because it just was no longer profitable, or it couldn't really carry an account anymore for plex. And as a result, perhaps we've got a little bit of less supply coming in as well. But I think for the advanced PI materials, one of the big factors is also CCP's announcement, or kind of hint at more structure stuff being in development. And advanced PI material is definitely used a lot in the production of structures. So you can see that old control towers, but then also let's go down for that, probably stand-up stuff. Yeah, there we go. Structure factory blueprint, structure hangar blueprint, all of that stuff. I think that basically quite a bit of the market is also speculating on demand picking up on these new structures that could potentially be coming to the game. And we see this nice research. I mean, that's a 50% increase over the course of around 1.5 months. That's pretty damn impressive. And it's in a lot of these advanced PI materials that this is showing up. But for the smaller stuff like construction blocks, it is definitely still not happening, although there should definitely be like construction blocks eventually finding their way into other markets as well, as you need those to create more from refined to no, not advanced, but then it's so advanced, specialized, and then advanced PI materials. But for now, right, the base stuff is still way too plentiful and very cheap. You can see we started the year for construction blocks at 11,000 ISK. We are now down to just above 7,000 ISK, 7.6 for the sellers, 6.8 for the buyers. Still a wide gap between sellers and buyers. And here I think that this is showing the problem. This is all of the supply that's available in JITA, and this is all of the demand that's available in JITA and in the Tranquility Trading Tower. So obviously we're still way more supplied than there is demand for the base refined PI materials. Consumer electronics, very same pattern, lost almost 50% of its value as well, still hovering on the 5-day moving average at the low point below 6,250. So we're talking 6,600 for the sellers, 5,700 for the buyers. Man, buying consumer electronics for 5,700 ISK, kind of a crazy situation. This normally sells for like 12,000 or something like that in the good old days. Then we've got coolants continuing the decline as well. I did not expect this, but it's also breaking through the 6,000 ISK barrier on the low side, and it's again just demand that is not there anymore. 6,800 for the sellers, and then 5,200. That's 1,600 margin between sellers and buyers. Percentage-wise, this is completely crazy, and it's still going down. And it's obviously again just not enough demand for supply for the supplies of refined PI materials. Cryoprotectant solutions, here we're back to some of these exceptions. It is a specialized material, but you can see this March-April bump in the price, which was tied to an implant launch from CCP, and these types of materials have actually been able to maintain their price ranges decently well after that jump above 100,000 ISK. Pretty damn impressive considering the charts on all of the others. 112,000 for the sellers, just below 100,000 for the buyers. Honestly, I do think that if you want to take that gamble, try to buy just below 100,000 ISK and then hope for CCP to come out with a new implant set that could be very profitable. Enriched uranium tied to fuels, hovering at a 1-year low point, same story, right? Probably 14,000 at the start of the year, currently selling for 7, half the price, and then buyers, oh my god, they're really not there, 4,600 for the buyers of enriched uranium. That is such a wide margin between sellers and buyers. This is completely crazy. So, you know, if you were thinking that there is like a structural change in the PI market happening because of the resurgence in advanced PI materials. Looking at what's happening for a lot of these refined PI materials, I'm going to say that a major part of it is just market speculation on new demand for structure stuff, because this clearly shows that the real demand isn't there in the markets. Next up, we've got the integrity response drones, able to also crawl its way back above 1.5 million and able to stay there. 1.6 million in fact for the sellers, 1.55 million for the buyers. Definitely renewed interest again in advanced PI materials, but since I'm not seeing it in the lower strata of PI, I do think it is mostly based on speculation. Mechanical parts, tied to fuel, started at 11,000 discs, settled below 7,000 discs, and let's take a look at those buyers again. 7,000 for the sellers, a little bit more, 6,600 for these buyers, and here a little bit more balanced between supply and demand. So we've got this narrower margin, but it's definitely, trading at a super low range. After that, we've got our nanites. Again, nice little start of the chart here. So that is tied to implants and has made its way back above 5,000 disc, which is not so bad. 5.8 for the sellers, 5.1 for the buyers. If you want to take that same gamble as with cryoprotection solutions on an implant launch, then you, in my opinion, should try to buy below 5,000 disc to be sure that you'll have a return eventually. Nano factories, all right, a little bit of a late bloomer for advanced PI materials, also in a different price region. Started here at around 1.2 to 1.5 million ISK, made its way down to less than 750, but here at the tail end you can see again a big surge in volumes on a single day has pushed the price back up to, let's see where the sellers are at, almost 900,000 ISK. Buyers coming in now at 855. They're basically forced to follow suit. But yeah, again, I don't think that this is really structural supply demand. I do think that this is basically the market speculating on what's going to happen next in EVE Online. It's still a nice gain though. Organic mortar applicators, also an advanced PI material, very same chart here, although again lower starting range of around 1 million ISK, dropping down to 600,000 ISK, losing 40% of its value and now making its way back up. 720 for the sellers, 700,000 for the buyers. Again, you do see like a couple of volume spikes, which to me indicate, and then after that immediately a diving down of these volumes at higher prices. So I do think, yeah, again, speculation is the name of the game. Recursive computer modules, in fact, very nice on the 1 year recovery here with a low point of like almost 750,000 ISK for something that's normally worth 1.5 million. We're back at 1.3 million for the sellers, 1.25 for the first buyer, quite aggressive. And this feels a little bit more structural. Here we don't see, although we see one big spike here that was then eventually absorbed by the market and we dove down below 1 million, but here now it's this one really that's the trigger. So that's still the speculative purchasing, I think, and then demand is actually generally high enough in the last week or so that we've been able to push us back up to 1.25, which honestly, that's pretty nice. Here the losses over the 1 year period have been limited quite nicely. Next up, we've got our robotics, also finally showing a first sign that, yeah, maybe we are starting to form a bottom here and there, specialized, so not the base materials, you could say, like the construction blocks and things like that. Slow uptick, but also, 50% down on the year, and then we're just back up a couple percentage points. It's still not great. 64,000 for the sellers, 61,000 for the buyers. Self-harmonizing power cores next. So yeah, trying to do the same thing again here. A trigger about 10 days ago of higher volumes. I again think it's speculation, and now today's price actually heading towards 1.5 million, almost 1.45 million for the sellers and 1.23 for these buyers. There is that interest, it's definitely true, in advanced PI materials. Sterile conduits also lost a little bit, but are we still below 1 million? Sellers, yeah, 880,000 ISK for the sellers, 815 for the buyers. So here is that final gamble that you could take on advanced PI materials. If you think that all these people that have been buying up advanced PI and have been able to drive the price up, recovering some of these losses, then sterile conduits could still be interesting, because this one still obviously trades at a very low range on the chart. Yukomi superconductors, also implant launch, actually, very violent at the start here, still way above 50,000 discs. So I would say 70k for the sellers, 66 for the buyers, very narrow margin. I would love to buy for an implant launch, but it would need to be a little bit lower. And then finally, we've got our wetware mainframes that are starting to hesitate. We pulled back from a bottom of 1 million ISK, which was over more than a 50% loss from the start of the year. We're back at the 1.2 million for the sellers, 1.2 million for the buyers, well, 1.3 for most sellers. So here, not really that much of a recovery just yet. But this is a story in PI. Definitely a very big difference between advanced PI materials tied to structures that are making somewhat of a comeback. Could also be tied to the war. A lot of infrastructure in Nozick has been destroyed there, and perhaps a decent chunk of that needs to be replaced in the medium term, or speculation on what could be coming next, I think, is part of the game there as well. Allow me to drink just a moment. As we move on to advanced moon materials, coming in at 35.20. Like that. And yeah, let's take a look. Oops, I'm actually getting like a little bit of interference here and there, but okay, let's keep moving. Crystalline carbonite. So we'll go through the carbonites, and then the metamaterials for Tech 2 production tied to the different factions. So crystalline carbonite, man, look at that, not bad. We had a nice surge up to 160 on a day about 5 days ago. We're making our way back down, but staying well above average, I would say. Yeah, 150 to 157 for most sellers, 147 for the buyers. So decent volatility for Galente production here in the crystalline carbonite market, and actually an above average price at the moment. Not bad, potentially driving prices up a little bit. Let's take a look at the Caldari one next. Always still have to look for that one. Here is titanium carbide. And this is actually really impressive when it comes to volatility. Actually at a range of like 180 down to the 130, 140-ish range. Look at that lovely volatility, and then here a final spike up above 200 ISK, and we're actually settling quite high on the recovery. 185 for the sellers, 182 for the buyers. Really strong demand as well. So the Caldari carbide, super expensive at the moment, and still able to command a well above average price, despite the fact that we just had this 1 year surge. Usually you see a little bit more of a drop on such an opportunity. You get a little bit more supply coming in that tends to crashes back down below average, which you can see here and here and here. But now, nope, the market is willing to pay that premium. For the Minmatar carbide, next it's a Fernite, which has a little bit of volatility, but basically still confirms that it has moved to a low range. Before this, with the war and everything, we had spikes up to 175 pretty easy, and then the bottom at 125. Now we're talking 133 for the sellers and 116 for those buyers. So our bottoms have gone down to the 110 range almost, I would say, and then our tops are definitely a lot lower, 150 at the best of times. So completely different situation. Galente Caldari at the moment above average, able to command that premium and apparently hold on to that quite well. Minmatar still in that lower range, and in fact I would say volatility could be declining at the moment as well if we look at these tops and these bottoms all coming together on a 125 price range. Finally, we get tungsten carbide for Amar, and yeah, while the others at least had some volatility, the Amar business cycle still definitely lacking any volatility. It just basically in two steps here, first 175 to 200, then 150 to maybe 180 or something like that, and then final step down 125 to 150, and we're just in that range pretty damn steadily and consistently. 140 for the sellers, 130 for the buyers, right smack in the middle of all of that. So still no volatility to be seen in these advanced move materials. So for Amar ships down here last week, we had some volatility there, so we'll see how things evolve from that perspective. After these base materials, we move on to the meta materials. So as always, we'll start with photonic for Galente. Quite a bit more stable, but clearly all of that volatility is starting to push the price back up. And in fact, today and yesterday, we're making average prices above 12.5. 13,300 for the sellers, 11,600 for the buyers, and indeed, look at that, we're drying up on the market, and that is starting to put some volatile upwards pressure on this potentially as well. Pretty nice. After that, we've got non-linear metamaterials for Caldari, and unlike the Galente ones, that volatility is definitely showing up on this chart. The range between 17.5 and 25,000 disc is pretty impressive. And at the moment, a bit of a counter move from the base material. We're actually going back down to 20k, 21 for the sellers, 18,400 for the buyers. But here we have volatility. That's definitely the name of the game. Try to buy low, right around these periods here, below 20,000 disc, I would say. Try to sell high towards 25k, and you're definitely making a profit on all of these waves, which has been quite consistent over the last year, with a slight downtrend to be seen in general though. After that, Minmatar metamaterial is Plasmonic, which is this one. Alright, definitely making its way back to its normal trade range, you could say, from the start of the year. So that is completely different from the base as well. 21,000 almost for the sellers, 19,500 for the buyers. So let's hope that this could help its base material to make its way back to an average as well. Plasmonic metamaterials, not a lot of volatility, but back on a normal trade range. And then finally for Amar, we've got terahertz metamaterials. Oh, all right, our first surge, our first move, a trend break here. You basically had the same thing, 20 to 22.5 here, normal range at the first half of this 1 year chart. First leg down 15k, market hesitated a little bit, and then we said, nope, we're going down. 12,500 to 15k was generally the price range for terahertz metamaterials. But here at the tail end, look at that, very, very nice surge back up. 17.5 for the sellers, 16,000 is for the buyers. Basically a little bit of drying up of the market here. I'm going to quickly check that there's a little bit of selling in perimeter, but it is not undercutting by that much or that big in volumes. So as a result, yeah, our first bit of volatility back in the Minmatar production, Amar production cycle, excuse me, which I think was also starting to show up in the ships themselves. So that's pretty cool. Let's see if it can start to become a rolling, waving behavior. Then, you know, this could be the start of potentially some profits in our Amar ships as well. After that, we've got some other materials tied to other stuff. And this is basically a mirror of the PI story, just, you know, deflated in price, lost a lot. Unless we see a trend break here, I'm going to go over these pretty quickly. So obviously fermionic condensates from the 90k range to a 65k range. Then we've got ferrogel, 45,000, and then down to 30 to 35,000. Fullerite, slight uptick, but you know, let's see how long it can last. 824 for the sellers, 724 for the buyers. Last 24 hours, half a page. I do fear that we will be driven back down very quickly on this one. All right, except hypersynaptic fibers, obviously a trend break, and this one could be significant because we started the year at above 11,000 disc and we're ending at almost 12,000 for the sellers, 11,600 for the buyers as well. Very, very impressive. Hypersynaptic fibers had lost the least, I would say, of all of these other advanced PI materials, but this is the first one that basically has made it back to an above average range for the sellers. That's interesting. Also a first sign that volatility may be picking back up in general in this market. Nanotransistors telling the exact opposite story, try to get back to 5k, but now the pressure is building again, so we're still at that lower range. Then we've got our phenolic composites. Ooh, bad news if you're looking for it to be sustainable. Phenolic composites made its way back to 2000 disc and has already crashed back down to 1400. 1333 for the first buyer. Ceramic fibers trying to pull away, but this is again from that bottom range of 300 disc. and we start here at around 400, 350 to 400. So in general, other advanced PI materials still very much under pressure, but we have our first ones that are trying to get back and doing so actually decently in a decently spiky way, I would say. And that potentially could mean that if you were some of the investors had managed to buy at the lowest prices, you could get some sell opportunities. Let's take a look at the impact on the Tech 2 ships then, coming in at 44.05. So these are, well, Caldari had a lot of volatility in its production cycle, and as a result we see that volatility mirrored here, for instance, in the Basilisk. Just about 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago we were at 230 million, and now we are under pressure. 198 for the sellers, 183 for the buyers. 183 for the buyers. You'd look to buy as close as possible to 180, so we're practically again in a buy place for this one. Then we've got the Cerberus. Not a surprise that this one came back, although a little bit of surprise if you didn't know about the Guardian's Gala, but Cerberus is a very good PvE platform and can potentially, I think, be used in the Guardian's Gala. It also has its place in Nosek, but look at that sustained demand over the last couple of days. I would say it is definitely the Guardian's Gala that's playing a role here, and so basically we are back up to 275 million for the sellers, 241 for the buyers. Nice margin between sellers and buyers. This is definitely, if you still have some cheaply bought Cerberus, which about 2 months ago you could have bought these probably for 190, 195, something like that, you're looking at a nice profit at the moment. Then first a Marwan, the Guardian. Alright, good news, I would say. Look at these volumes, they are up, and finally we've moved away from that bottom range. It's still pretty timid. We're at 195 million for the sellers, 178 for the buyers, still a big margin. You can still buy low, I would say. But we're finally seeing a little bit of a resurgence from a struggling segment in the Tech 2 ship market, which is the Amar ships. So let's see if this is the start of things or not, and let's also see who becomes the predictor and who becomes the lagging indicator, because that is between these advanced movements and the ships themselves. And here I would say that the first one to jump up has been the Guardian. Now we've seen the meta materials respond, and then let's see if the base material responds or not in the next few weeks. Next up here we've got the Hound, slowly stabilizing on the 25 million range. It is for Minmatar, which has basically, moved to that lower range and has some volatility, but not that great. 27 million for the sellers, 22 million for the buyers. I would say almost enough, but yeah, look for lower buy prices to buy and for higher sell prices to sell. Basically try to get 30 to 20, that would be great. At the moment it's just not in the books. The Ikitursa, taking a look at the Triglavian situation, a little bit of pressure, but still of course super expensive. 789 million for the seller, 709, a little bit of supply coming online here, last 24 hours. You can see here, couple, definitely here as well, and then 2 days ago, couple of sell orders as well, or is that 2 to 3 days ago? All right, we're seeing some supplies taking a hold here. Could be interesting. I still need to take a look at that. I need to make my way to Pogven and see if I can build up my reputation. From what I hear and what I gather from the comments, it is actually possible to now be both positive with Edencom and the Triglavians, which should in general mean that, although it is very risky space and it's different to get into, as more players find out that it is actually very profitable as a result, and you can do it, basically play both parties, we should see a steady increase in supplies, in my opinion. Let's see if that prediction holds true later down the line. Here is one of my favorite ships, the Ishtar, managed to make its way back to a 240 million range, but now is already paying the price of that massive surge over 2 months, though, from a bottom price. At the moment selling for 210, buyers coming in at 193. It is Galente ship and selling a little bit below average. I'm not sure if I would buy just yet though. Looking at this decrease in price, perhaps we could go even lower and then try to sell at the right time. But this was definitely tradable, although it felt kind of risky at the time to jump in. Then we've got the Manticore, that's a lot better. Caldari immediately showing its potential. Again, bottoms at 20 million, high points at almost 40 million ISK. And this is over the course of basically 1 month, where you could have easily made a 50% and up profit on this price volatility right here. At the moment, we're actually making our way back up. 33 million for the sellers, 26 for the buyers. So we're not really seeing that same bottom range of going well below 25 million ISK, but the volatility still exists, and obviously Caldari stuff pretty expensive at the moment. So compare this Del Bomber at 33 million to the Hound at 27 million, obviously a lot more expensive. After that, we've got the Munin for Minmatar, one big war spike, because it is or was a doctrine in the Imperium that was attacked, but after that, basically back in that lower range for Minmatar ships. A little bit of a comeback at the tail end, some volumes here as well, so I would say that that's tied to the war, not really anything specific to the whole economy. And as a result, here at the tail end, we're diving back down a bit. 220 for the sellers, 197 for the buyers. Buyers still below 200 million, so it's more demand. I think it was some purchasing from the Imperium or perhaps other NOSE groups as well, of course, that caused the price to increase, but those buyers understood that it is just a one chip thing, and so they just never moved. They're still below 200 million. Then the Nemesis, our Galente stealth bomber, able to stay above 25 as well, basically in that same situation as the Hound, I would say. 26 million for the sellers, 23 million for the buyers. Too narrow a margin, too stable at the end. So where about a year ago you could have done a lot of trading in these stealth bombers, at the moment that seems to be a little bit down in potential. But what's making a comeback seems to be logistics cruisers. Here is the Oneros, last 2 months. Low points 150, high point 200, back down to 150, up to 230. This is where you can make quite a bit of ISK. At the moment, back down substantially, selling for 168, buyers at 157. And so yeah, you're buying an Oneros below 160 million, which is down here on the chart. It's your prerogative. Do you think it's the right time to jump in? I've always warned you with the Oneros, look at these volumes, 12 to 25 ships a day. That's not a lot, but with a single one, I do think that it is worth a gamble from time to time. After that, we've got the Panther continuing to show a little bit of pressure in general, I would say. Big ship, so this one tends to not be that much of a speculative moving chart, I would say. And so here we're going substantially below a billion ISK, excuse me. It's 1 billion for the sellers, 926 for the buyers. But this is interesting. There is some supply, but nothing too crazy, especially in the last 24 hours. And it's demand that's dropping off for the Panther that's causing that decrease, if we look at that part of the chart. So I'm not sure if it is really just a general depression through the Minmatar production cycle, or it's really the Panther that is struggling with demand at the moment. The Purifier making its way back to 27.5 as well, low points at 22.5. all right, so this is a MAR. Okay, another surge, you could say. 29 million for the sellers, 25 million for the buyers, and another basically first move, although quite timid, not as good as some of these that you can see here in the first half of the chart, but definitely a first sign of movement in these MR ships, and thus in the MR Tech 2 market. So we had the same problem. You had the first half of the year, the MR goods in advanced materials, you saw, all right, trading at a higher range, and so you had this potential, at least in the volatility. Then down here we drop off to a new range, and we basically have a lot less volatility, a very stable market, as the baseline materials were also too stable. And now at the tail end, again before the metamaterials, we have a slight jump in the Purifier. So let's see if this can gain momentum and if we can get back to some volatility in the Purifier later down the line. The Scimitar has done a two-step up back to 230, not bad. 232 million for the sellers and 211 for the buyers. So really logistics cruisers doing a little bit better in the volatility domain, but also again here 50 a day is the limit, so I would never risk more than one ship. And then we've got the Widow, which also dropped off to 900 million ISK and made its way back to a billion ISK. 1.1 for the sellers, 9-10 million still for the buyers. So this is not really something where you can make speculative moves on these types of dives. I don't think 10 ships a day as well. Very, very difficult to do anything with that. And it's basically on a day or a couple of days where the buyers win out, and there's a few people dumping some widows to these buyers. You get this on the chart to 900, and then on the days where it's mostly the sellers that are able to dictate the market, people are impatient, they want to buy that widow, they're willing to pony up 1.1 billion, we get this price here. So this is not structural volatility or tradable volatility. This is just supply demand side. Sometimes it's the buyers that win out, sometimes it's the sellers. That's creating this volatility. It does show a little bit of, again, hesitation or some moves, some strange moves in the Qatari ship market segment, which is almost strange because you can see how stable above a billion ISK the widow has been for the entire year. And then finally we've got the Zealot, also a MAR, and that first sign of, again, volatility. So that's really interesting how the advanced moon materials market is showing through on the Tech 2 ships, but it's not an exact mirror. Once you move to that higher trade range for the advanced movements for a MAR production, you get that higher potential in volatility, high points of 300 million, low points of 230, very easy, predictable and tradable. Then that range moves down, and you can see that the volatility just slumps as well. And here at the tail end, again, a little bit more volumes, a first crunch up in the price, although not as high as we would like to see, but let's see if that's a precursor. And again, before the metamaterials move as well in the advanced movements market. Pretty interesting. I kind of hope that this does evolve in more volatility in the MAR ship markets. After that, we have our Tech 3 ships that's coming in at 55.30. Like that. And as always, we'll start with the destroyers. Here is the Confessor going just below 50 million ISK, just below that for the sellers indeed, 43 million for the buyers. Decent margin opening up, and supply wise we are slowing down at this current price. I think this was somewhat expected. Not exactly sure why we were at last week, but yeah, the Hecate is also settling below 50 million ISK at 48 for the sellers, 44 for the buyers. And here we still have quite a bit of supply coming in, like over 100 ships in the first 4 sell orders. That's going to keep everything in check at 48. So my read on this is expect the Confessor to, show an increased supply in the upcoming week or weeks as well, and head towards that 48 million range too. After that, we've got the Jackdaw, which is also now going down to less from 45 million, 44 for the sellers, 41 for the buyers. Again, last 24 hours. Yeah, this is a lot of ships as well. So we should start to see a slowdown in the Jackdaw. The Hecate is basically the stabilizing factor, I would say, at around, but maybe we could go down in general to 45. But I think right now this supply should slow down, this supply should slow down, and it should find its way in the Confessor. That's going to put pressure on that price, and as a result we're going to probably settle in a 45 to 50 million range across the board. And unfortunately, right, if you're looking for tradable stuff at the moment, all of them are, I would say, they feel pretty high in the price range. So just make them and sell them. That makes a lot of sense. You get good margins. But for trading, buy low, sell high, that potential does not exist right now. Basically all of them are going to stabilize at a similar range. Then we've got the Zwepel that also made its way back down to 45 million, 47 for the sellers, 43 for the buyers, and here supply is already back in line with what you would expect for the least popular tactical destroyer at the moment. And it could be that this one is actually right on the money. 47, as I said, 45 to 50 million. Expect prices to stabilize there. They're all already within that range. So really all we can expect at the moment is more stabilization of the prices, as these ships are basically still going to be absorbed and keep us in check, I think, in the upcoming weeks. Let's see if the situation is different for the Legion. So it's a little bit unfortunate, but that's just also part of the reality. When you've got a market that seems to be functioning well, I'm just going to add this, you get predictable things, but that also means that sometimes you get pretty stable situations as well, where you're not going to find trade opportunities. So here, this confessor that was below 45 million, and at the time I said, you could buy this for probably 33 or something like that, down here somewhere. That was the right time to jump in, which was very predictable, looking at where the Hecate was at 50, looking at where the Jackdaw was actually making its way up to 45 as well. And then we actually had this Vapel that was starting to show volatility on the upside as well. And so this confessor increased in price over 1 month from below 40 million to above 50 million, was very predictable and was super tradable. But after that, now all of them are in that same situation. These are definitely ships that interact with each other and that have similar roles across the universe, unique roles as well. And so as a result, when we're here, make them and sell them. It's a great time for industrialists. It's not a great time for traders in the tactical destroyer markets. Then we've got the cruisers. So the Legion is continuing to show a little bit of pressure. Currently selling for just below 160, buyers at 146. Again, if you follow Eve Talk, I don't like this one from predictability standpoint. The strategic cruiser market is basically so small that I think it is being manipulated to hell and back from time to time by players with big wallets. After that, we've got the Loki, slow trend up, going for 190, buyers at 175. Supply wise, right, nothing too crazy for the most popular tactical destroyer, tactical cruiser, to get this premium is quite normal. The Proteus is back down towards a more normal range for this one as well. I would say 161 for the sellers, 148 for the buyers. Decent supplies here, right? Last 24 hours, almost a full page. That is going to put some pressure on this one. And then finally we get the Tengu that is staying above 180. Just about 180 for the sellers, 165 for the buyers. Yeah, not that much to say. Most of them, I think, settling in an okay price. I think industrialists, people making these ships, are decently happy with this range, and I think people using them are quite okay with them as well. But again, that problem is that we're talking maybe 50 ships or so to 165, and then add in another couple dozen and you're in the 180 mark. This is doable for almost anyone with a wallet. And so this market, unfortunately, not as predictable as the destroyer market because of its smaller size, easily manipulated, which I think happens from time to time, like here and then here, which it does some crazy stuff. So this is the gambling market. I would really only buy when you're at a 1 year low point and only with a single ship, and then try to sell at a profit. That would be my tactic for trading in this strategic cruiser markets. And then finally we are moving on to the extra product, coming in at 110. Like that, and it's a request, actually a late request. Someone in the comments asked me to go and take a look at the gas product. So for that we gotta go to materials, gas cloud materials. We'll do a quick run of all of them. I guess here are the booster gas clouds. Let's take a look at some of these charts. So all right, interesting first trend on this one. I would say for the second half of last year, we're actually moving to a higher range from 100,000 to 150,000, and then at the tail end we're actually diving back down. It's still 140 for the sellers, 90,000 for the buyers, though a little bit of a lack of demand starting to show up here at the tail end is my read on this one. Same thing for amber mycoserosin. I'm not sure how to express all of these, but about half a year ago we moved to a higher range and we're able to stay there for now, well above 5,000 disc, where before 2,000 disc was probably the normal price. Azure next, a little bit of volatility here, very different, but look at these trade volumes, definitely not a regular market to make moves into. But you are, let's see if there is indeed a big range here, 72,000 for the sellers, 62,000 for the buyers. That's a decent range between sellers and buyers. So yeah, sometimes sellers win out, sometimes buyers win out. Average price 75k, pretty high, but nothing too crazy. Next one here, basically a little bit of pressure at the tail end as well, but a normal price, not much to say on that one. Next one here, Celadon, actually down for the year, so that's different. This one also under pressure at the tail end, while it was trading above average. Ooh, our first interesting one, golden cytocerosine, actually a bit of a breakout to a 1-year high point, currently selling for 130,000 ISK almost, buyers coming in at 80,000. So if you can find this and bring it to the market right now, you're probably looking at a valuable cargo hold. Very different situations between these different types of gas booster gas clouds here. Golden mycocerosine, basically the same thing as our first one, moved about half a year ago to a higher range and is for now able to command that premium. Lime also definitely, well, actually back at the start of the year, so depressed year, but made its way back. And this one, same story here for lime type gas products, started around 25k, fully depressed year below that, and we're back at 25k at the end. Malachite stuff, all over the place, but pretty stable over the year. This one actually gained 100% over the year, quite some volatility at the tail end. And look at these volumes, that's interesting, must be a specific booster that it can make, the Mindflood booster reaction formula that can see some demand. Could be tied to the war, not sure exactly what Mindflood does. I don't use boosters that often myself, but that one's looking quite good in volatility. Vermilion stuff, an up year with basically a starting point and an end point in the same place, and then the other one actually up on the year. Let's take a quick look at this chart as well. Probably introduction here for Viridian, so could be tied to more Triglavian stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but has found its range. Not much to say on this one, and here up in price. Alright, very mixed picture, not really a market that I'm too familiar with, but for now it looks like a lot of these are doing quite well, especially compared to like PI and things like that. Then we get something that I'm a little bit more familiar with, which are the Fullerites and Fullerines coming from Wormhole Space. Let's take a look at the C28 one. Definitely depressed. Moved to a lower range and is basically here. We had one nice spike in December up to 10,000 ISK, but right now we're selling for less than 6, buyers coming at 5.5. That's definitely below average. C32, same thing, November, December spike up to 25,000, currently for 16,000, buyers at below 15k, definitely again trading below average. C320 also down for the year, didn't even have a late year spike here in December, it's just moving to that lower trade range and it's staying there. C50 next is able to stay in line for the whole year and trading a little bit above that since another December spike. Very noticeable here again, 6,000 ISK, 50% increase here in a matter of 2-3 weeks, and then now we're above 4k, but it's not that well, it's a slightly above average price. Fullerites, basically before everyone else in October we had a spike to 1-year high point of 80k, then we lost 50% of the value again down to less than 40k, and now we basically just crawl out of the hole and we're back at an average price, 52,000 for the sellers, 50,000 for the buyers. Very narrow margin, but this is what you can expect in general, so okay to sell, okay to hold on this range, I would say. C60, definitely a very bad half of the year here as well, trying to get back to a more normal price, but struggling to do so, selling for 2.6, buyers at 1.8. That's a large margin between sellers and buyers, so I would not be surprised that some supply could bring us back down below 2k quickly on the average. C70 also down a bit, not that much. C72 down for the year, definitely from 10,000 to 7,500. Again, the December spike, very noticeable. 1-year high point, 20k, 100% increase, and then a couple of weeks later losing all of those gains very quickly, and then in fact move back to a below average range. And then C84, here is the December spike again, and this one is still trading a little bit above average. So for the fuller range, we have a more uniform picture. We definitely have that November December spike that happened almost across the board, 1 year high point, mega gains, but all of that squashed very quickly. And a lot of these are currently trading below average, in my opinion. Not good news, I would say, for the gas miners in wormhole space. But that's the reality. This is the market, and this was Eve Talk. Thank you very much for watching, guys. And as always, I'll see you next time.